Hey everyone, welcome back to part 3 of our inventory management system project built using Python, Tkinter and MySQL database. In part 1, we designed this admin dashboard, and in part 2, we created this employee details page. If you haven't seen those yet, I'll link them in the description below so you can catch up. In this part, we will dive into the functionality of the buttons we have added. We are going to learn a lot today, including how to connect our Python code to the MySQL database, add data, update it, delete it, search for it, and much more. So stay tuned and let's get started. So to connect your Python code with MySQL database, you will be requiring one external module, which is PyMySQL. So you can go to the terminal, and here you need to type pip install PyMySQL. So this will help in connecting with the database. Once it is installed, you can go at the top and simply import it. So you'll write import PyMySQL like this. So as you can see, this file already has a lot of code, right? So what we can do for simplicity, for better readability, we can create a separate file for the functionality. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a new Python file. I'll name it employees, and from here I'm gonna copy this employee form completely, okay, and I'm gonna paste here like this, and I'll expand it, okay. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to the button. So this is our employee button, and as you can see, I have passed command here, right, employee form. So what I'm gonna do here, I need to import this function employee form in this dashboard.py file, okay. So I'm gonna write here from employees import employee form like this. Now you see the error is gone, but if I run at this stage and if I click on this employees button, I'm getting some error. Error says frame is not defined. So in this form, you can see this red zigzag line that shows there is an error, that frame is not defined, right? So what we have to do, firstly we have to pass the window argument here, okay. So I'll pass window argument here, but if I'm passing like this, then this employee form function will run as I run this code. You can see this employee form is running as I'm running this code. I want this function to run only when I click on the employees button, right? So for that you have to use lambda, okay. So now when you will run this code, this employee form function will run only when you will click on this employees button. I hope you are getting this, but you are seeing the error, right? That employee form takes 0 positional arguments but 1 was given. So we are passing window here, but we are not receiving it here. So we need to receive it window like this, okay. So this error is gone. Now for frame we have to import Tkinter here. So we'll write from Tkinter import asterisk like this. So you see the error is gone. Now we have some more errors you can see here, right? So there are total 9 errors, and once you click on it, you will be able to see the error. So this is the error, and you can see you need to import this TTK also, right? So we'll write here from Tkinter import TTK So I'm separating this code from our dashboard.py code so that it is clear to you that this complete file has everything related to employee, right? Everything related to the employee page. So now the code is much cleaner. So here we just have the information regarding the dashboard page, and here we have the information regarding the employees details page. Okay, I hope this is clear. We still have some errors. Let's see. Unresolved reference date entry. Yeah, so we also need to import date entry from TK calendar. Import date entry like this. So now see, there is no error. Okay, now coming back to the dashboard page, here you see all this is not highlighted because these are not getting used anywhere, so we can remove it. Okay, I hope you understood it. So here we just have the GUI part, that's it. We don't have any functionality part here. Okay, so we are simply separating the functionality part to some other file. For employees, we will create employee file and we'll add everything inside this file. I hope this is clear. Now if you run it and click on this employees, you are able to see that same page. Okay, and you are not seeing any error now. Okay, so we can go to this employees.py file, and here we'll import PyMySQL for connecting with the database. Okay, and here I'm gonna create one function, def connect database. Inside this function, I'll be establishing the connection with the database. So I'll write pymysql.connect, and here we need to pass host name, which is localhost for everyone, then the username. Okay, so username for me is root. So username is generally root by default for everyone, but if you have changed username while installing MySQL, then you have to write that username here. And then the password. So while installing MySQL, you must have set some password. So I have set 1234. I'm going to use that. Okay, so this will simply establish the connection with the MySQL database, and I'll name it connection. Okay, so this connection variable will be used to commit our changes, okay, or to close the connection with the MySQL database. And using this connection, we will also create a cursor. Okay, and this cursor will help in executing the SQL queries. So I'll name it my cursor, or even just cursor is fine. You can press Ctrl Alt L after writing some lines of code so that the code is formatted properly. So after connecting with the database and creating the cursor, what if the connection is not established? So what we'll do, we'll add this inside a try block, and if something goes wrong, then we'll go to the except block, and in the except block we can display some message box. So I'll write message box, but since it's not imported, so we will not be able to use it. So we have to import it from Tkinter only. So I'll write from Tkinter import message box like this, and now we'll be able to use the message box. So I'll write message box dot show error. Okay, and firstly we have to pass the title. So title will be error, and the message will be database connectivity issue, try again. Sometimes the connection is not established with the database, so you will see this error message, database connectivity issue, try again. Okay, so in that case what you can do, you can simply open your command line client and just enter the password there. Okay, and now you can close it, and if you run this code again, if you will not have any issues here, here and here, then database connectivity issue will not occur. Okay, so in this message you can also add that please open MySQL command line client. Open MySQL command line client, and then we will return from here. We don't want further code to be executed if we are getting the error message. Okay, so if the connection is successful and we are not getting any error, then this block of code will be executed. If you are getting some error, then this except block code will be executed. Okay, so if try block code is executed, after that we want to create a database, right? So we'll execute one query. So we'll write here cursor dot execute, and here we have to write the SQL query. So we'll write here create database if not exists. So we will only create the database if that database doesn't exist. Okay, so we'll name the database as inventory system. You can name anything. Okay, and after the database is created, next step is to create the table in the database. So we'll write here cursor dot execute, and here we'll again write the SQL query for creating the table. So we'll write create table if not exists. So Python will only create the table if not exists, and then the table name, which is employee data, or you can name it full like employee data. And then after the table name you have to mention the columns that will be there. So first one will be employee ID, which will be of type integer, and it will be a primary key, means it will be unique. After employee ID, next column will be name, and its data type will be varchar, which is variable characters, and it will have up to 100 characters. After that, email, which will be varchar again, and it will have 50 characters, or let's say 100 characters only. Then gender, varchar 50 characters, and this way you have to create all the columns. Okay, so I'll move it to a new line. So I have added rest of the columns here. After gender we have date of birth, which can have maximum 30 characters, then contact again 30 characters, employment type 50 characters, then work shift 50 characters, address 100 characters, date of joining 30 characters, salary 50 characters, user type 50 characters, and lastly the password 50 characters. Okay, so this is how you have to create the table. And I forgot to add one more query. After creating the database, we have to use that database, and then we will be creating the table. So just after creating the database, we have to add one more query. So we'll write query.execute, and here it will be use inventory system. Okay, so we'll firstly create the database, then we'll move to that database, and then we'll create the table employee data, and there these columns will be created. So after defining this connect database function, we can call it. So let's call it directly here, connect database, like this. And before running this code, let me show you my MySQL databases that are already there. So here I'll write show databases. So you can see we have employee data, HMS, but there is no inventory system database, right? So I'll minimize this. Now I'll run this code. Once I'll click this employees button, connect database function will be called, right? So firstly the database will be created, then we'll move to that database, and then the table will be created. So once I click on it, now you can go back to MySQL command line client and you can press up arrow and hit enter. So now you can see there is one more database created, inventory underscore system, right? Now you'll have to use this database, inventory system, like this. Okay, database is changed. Now you can see the tables by writing show tables. So there's employee data, right? Now if you want to see the columns in this table, you have to write description employee data. So these are all the columns. Employee ID, which is of type int, right? And it can't be null because it's a primary key. Okay, and it will always be unique. Then we have name, email, gender, date of birth, contact, employment type, education, work shift, address, date of joining, salary, user type, and password. Okay, so I hope you are clear with this. Now next thing that I want is, once I click on this add button, if these fields are empty, then I should see an error message that all fields are required. Okay, and if these fields are non-empty, in that case all these details should be inserted inside the database which we have created just now. So let's see how we can do it. So we'll go to the add button. So here we have this add button and we are going to provide command here. So command equals to add employee. Okay, so this is nothing but a function, so we'll define it at the top. So let's define it after connecting the database. Def add employee. So we'll check here if employee ID entry, but you can see I'm not able to use this employee ID entry inside this add employee function. This is because employee ID entry is defined inside this function, right? So one way is you can make that employee ID entry global and then you will be able to use it, right, in some other function. The another way is to pass it while calling the function. So we are calling this add employee from this add button, right? So here we can pass employee ID entry dot get. So we are passing the value of the employee ID entry. So it can either be a null string or it can have some value. Similarly, I will be passing other entry fields values like name entry dot get, email entry dot get, after that gender combo box dot get. Okay, then I'll move it to a new line. After that dob date entry dot get, comma, contact entry dot get, employment type combo box dot get. Then again we'll move to a new line, education combo box dot get, work shift combo box dot get, then address text dot get. And in case of address text, we have to mention from where to where. Okay, so the starting index is 1.0 and I want to capture all the data till the end. We are left with doj date entry dot get, salary entry dot get, user type combo box dot get, and then password entry dot get. Okay, so we are simply passing the values of these entry fields and combo boxes to this add employee function. Okay, and now let's receive these values in some variables. So here we have this add employee. So employee ID entry value, I'm going to receive an employee ID variable. Name entry value, I'll receive an name variable. Then email entry value, I can receive an email variable, and so on. So let me quickly create all the variables. So these are all the columns in which I am receiving the values from the entry fields and the combo boxes. Okay, so for example, if I just print this for your understanding what we are getting inside these variables. So if I am printing employee ID and name, these two variables only for now. So if I run it, if I am entering something here and something here, and if I click on this add, you are not seeing anything. Why? This is because inside this add, if you see this command equals to add employee and you are passing these arguments, right? So what is happening when you are running this code, this add employee function is directly getting called without you pressing add button. Okay, but I want this function to be called when I press this add button, right? So I'll be adding lambda here like this. Now when you will click on this add button, then only this function will be executed. Okay, so let me rerun this code. 1 2 3 and name Pezan, add. So now you can see that we are getting the values that you are writing in the entry fields, right? So I hope you are getting this. So when you are clicking this add button, this add employee function is getting called and these values are passed from here and we are receiving these values in these variables. Okay, and then I have simply printed employee ID variable and name variable. So in employee ID we are receiving 1 2 3 and in name variable we are receiving Faizan. I hope this is clear. So now firstly I'll check that if these fields are empty or not. I mean, if any of these fields will be empty, I will display an error message that all fields are required. Okay, so I'll check here that if employee ID is having null or name is having null or email is having null or gender, which is a combo box. So I'll have to check if it is select gender. Okay, so if gender is select gender, it means the admin has not selected the gender, right? Or dob, since we already will have the date in the dob date entry, right? So we don't have to check. Similarly, date of joining we will not check. Okay, we'll check for contact if it is null or not because it's an entry field. After that, employment type, we'll check whether it is set to select type or education equals to select education. So we are seeing this error because we have not wrapped it inside parentheses. So we'll wrap this condition like this and we'll add colon at the end. Okay, now or work shift equals to select shift or address equals to \n. So when text area is empty, that means it only have this new line character. Okay, so we'll compare it with this new line character. Okay, or salary equals to null because it's an entry field, or user type equals to select user type. Okay, I'll move this to a new line like this, and I'll simply format it Control Alt L. So the code is formatted. So if this condition will be true, it means these fields are either empty or the options are not selected. Okay, so in that case I will display a message box. So I'll write message box dot show error, title will be error, and the message will be all fields are required, like this. Now let's run. So if I directly click on this add, it says all fields are required, right? But if I fill these details quickly, so after filling these details, now if I click on this add, so you are not seeing that error message, okay, because you have successfully filled all the fields. Okay, but if any of these fields is empty, for example contact is empty, now if you click on this add, it says all fields are required. Okay, so none of the fields should be empty. Now we have to insert this data inside the table. So let's see how we can do it. So we'll go to the else part, and sorry, I forgot to check for the password, right? So here I'll write or password equals to null, like this. I'm not checking for date of birth and date of joining because these two date entry will already have some date there, right? Now in the else part, we will write the query to insert the data into the database. Okay, so if you remember, we have called this connect database function directly here, right? Instead of calling directly here, I'm gonna call it in the else part. Okay, because that's when the database connection should be established and the data should be inserted in the database, right? So once the user fills all the details, this condition will become false. You'll go in the else part. In the else part, firstly the database connection will be established, means database will be created, the table will be created, and then you can insert the data inside the database. Okay, so for inserting the data, we'll be writing cursor dot execute, but you see we are seeing error because the cursor variable is defined inside this connect database function, right? So what we can do, we can return the cursor and connection from this connect database function. Okay, so after table is created, we will return the cursor and connection. Okay, because these two variables will be required in other functions. Okay, and if there is some database connectivity issue, in that case I will return none comma none. So none for the cursor and none for the connection. Okay, now this connect database uh, is returning the cursor and the connection, so we'll take it in some variable, and the variables can be same also, cursor comma connection. Okay, now you see the error is gone. So before executing the insertion query, I will check here if not cursor or not connection. Okay, so if cursor or connection will be none, in that case I will return from here. I will not execute the rest of the code. I hope you are getting this. And if these are not none, okay, if we have some values, it means database connection is successful and the table is created. In that case, I will be executing the query here. So I'll write here insert into employee data, which is the table name, values. Here you need to add placeholders for the values you want to insert. So %s, comma %s. Here we need to include as many %s placeholders as there are columns in the database table. So there are total 14 columns. So we need to add 14% here like this, and these work like empty slots that will be filled with actual data. After this, inside this tuple, you have to pass the actual data that you want to insert into the table. So the data that needs to be inserted into the table is inside these variables, right? So I'll copy these variables from here and I'll paste inside this tuple like this. So each value inside this tuple corresponds to one of the placeholders in the SQL command. Okay, I hope this is clear. So after doing any modification in MySQL data, like for example here we are inserting, so it's a modification to the data, right? So we also need to commit our changes. So for committing our changes, we'll be requiring the connection, okay, and we'll use the commit method like this. And after that, we can simply display a message box and will show info. Title will be success and the message will be data is inserted successfully. And now if you run it, now if I fill these details, so after filling these details, now if I click on this add button, you can see data is inserted successfully. Now let's check our database. So you can open the MySQL command line client, okay, and here I'm gonna firstly see the tables, as there is one table only, employee data. Now to see the data of this table, we'll write query select asterisk from employee data like this. Once you hit enter, you can see the complete data, right? So we have inserted one record, so that one record is added inside the database. So I hope this is clear how to insert data inside the database. Okay, now after the data is inserted, I want this same data to be inserted in this tree view under these columns. Okay, so just before displaying this message box, I'll call one function which is tree view data. This will be simply loading the data from MySQL inside the tree view. Okay, so let's define this function. At the top, def tree view. So inside this function, firstly we'll connect to the database and this will give us the cursor and the connection. Okay, now again we'll do the same thing. Firstly we'll check that if cursor or connection is not none, So if these will be none, then we'll simply return, okay. Otherwise, we'll execute the query. So we'll write my cursor dot execute select asterisk from employee data, okay. So this query will select all the records from employee data table. After that, we'll fetch all the records. So we'll write cursor dot fetch all. So this will return all the records of employee. So I'll receive in this variable employee records. If I print this variable, so you'll understand what is there inside this variable, okay. So now if I run it again, let me again fill this details quickly. After filling these details, now if I click on this add, I am getting this error TreeView data is not defined. This is because here I have given the name TreeView data and here I am only writing TreeView. So it will be TreeView data like this. Let me rerun. After filling the details, now if I click on add, it says data is inserted successfully. Now let's see what we are getting on the console. So we are seeing the records, all the records that are inserted in the database, right. First record, so every record is inside a tuple. So this is the first record, okay. Then this is the second one, and then this is the third one. All right. So I hope you understood what we are getting in employee records. We are getting all the records that are there in the database. Okay, now we want to display these records on the tree view. So we'll use a loop here for records in employee records. Let's use record for record in employee records. We'll use employee tree view. You are not able to use this employee tree view. This is because this employee tree view is defined inside this employee form, right. So we can make it global so that we can access it in other functions. So I have made it global and now I am able to access it here, right. So employee tree view dot insert, and to this insert method, firstly we have to pass empty string, then we want to insert the data at the end, and then what is the data that we have to pass to values argument. So we have to pass this record to this values argument. So now one by one all this data will be inserted inside the tree view. I hope this is clear. Let's run and see. Let me fill this form. Now after filling these details, you can see data is inserted successfully and all the records are getting displayed in this tree view under these columns. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Now if I run this code again, what I want, once I click on this employees, I should see all the records in this tree view. Okay, so what I'll do, so you have this tree view data function defined. I'll call it after defining it directly like this. You can see we are seeing this error, employee tree view is not defined. So if you are defining the function here and calling it from here, then this employee tree view is not defined, right? Because this employee tree view is coming from the employee form, right? So what I'll do, I'll cut this function call from here and I'll call it after the tree view is created, just before the details frame. So here I'll call it. Now if I run it, now if I click on this employees, you can see I'm able to see all the employees that are there in the database. I hope this functionality is clear to you. One more thing that I want to show you, let me fill this details. Now if I click on this add, so here if you see, the previous data is there and the new data is inserted after that. Okay, but what I want, firstly the previous data should be deleted, then only the new data should be inserted. Okay, so for that, before inserting, I'll delete everything from the tree view. So here before insertion, I'll write employee tree view dot delete method. So we will be getting all the children's inside the employee tree view and we'll simply delete them, and then only we will be inserting the records inside the tree view. I hope this is clear. So now you won't see the duplicated records. Now if I click on this add, you see data is inserted, and now we are not seeing the duplicate details. So firstly the previous data got deleted and then the new data is inserted. After this, firstly let's work on the functionality of this clear button. So once I click on it, all these fields should be reset. Okay, so here I'm gonna define a function def clear fields. This will help in clearing all the fields, means resetting all the fields. So let me pass it for now and let me call this function. So from where I'll call it from the clear button. So here we have a clear button and I'm going to pass command to it. So command equals to clear fields. Okay, so I need to pass all the fields and the combo boxes to this clear field method, right? So I'm gonna use lambda here. So these are all the fields that I have passed to this clear fields. And notice one thing, that I have not passed their values. So I have not used get method here, just like we have used the get method here. Okay, because here we were passing the values of these fields, but here we are just passing the fields. Okay, then in clear fields we will use these fields and we'll use the delete method of these fields to delete everything. Okay, so I'll copy these fields, then I'll come to this clear fields and we'll paste here. Okay, I can format this code, and now what I'll do, I'll take this employee ID entry and we'll use the delete method to delete this field. Okay, so I want to delete from start till end. Similarly, we'll take the name entry and we'll delete everything from start till end, and this way I'll do it for other entry fields. Then dob date entry dot set date, and we'll set the today's date. So we'll use date dot today. Okay, so date we will import from date time. So here only we'll write from date time import date module. So basically we will reset the date to today's date. Okay, inside this dob date entry. I hope this is clear. Then gender combo box will be reset to select gender. After that, contact entry dot delete from start till end, because it's an entry field, so we have to use the delete method. After that, employment type combo box dot set select type. After that, education combo box dot set select education. Then work shift combo box dot set select work shift. Then we have address text, so we'll write address text dot delete and will delete from 1.0 till end. So in case of text area, we have to pass the index from 1.0. Okay, so this is the starting index. Until end, we want to delete everything. After text area, we have date of joining, date entry dot select set date, and here we'll use date dot today. Here also we'll reset today's date. Then salary entry dot delete from start till end. After that, user type combo box dot set select user type. After that, password entry dot delete from start till end. Now I can run it. So if I fill these details, so once you fill these details and if you click on this clear button, you can see everything is reset. So these entry fields data got deleted, this text area field data also got deleted, and these combo boxes are reset, and these date entries are reset to today's date. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now I want to fix one thing in this code. So you have seen that I have created this connect database function, right? Inside it, we are establishing the connection, and then we are creating the database, we are creating the table, right? And this we are using here, connect database, and in this add employee also we are using it, connect database. So don't you think if the database and tables are created once, then executing the same code again and again, it's simply not optimized way, right? So what I'll do, I'll simply separate this code. So I'll separate the database connection code and I'll separate this part of code. I'll simply cut this code from here. Okay, and I'll create one more function here, def create database table. So this is the function, and now I can paste here. Okay, but see, this cursor is not defined here, right? Because it is defined inside this connect database. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll call this connect database function here. Okay, so this function will return us two things, cursor and connection. Now I can call this create database table one time from this function. So at the last, we can call this function create database table. Okay, so I'm calling it from this employee form function. Okay, so now when you'll click on employees button, this employee form function will be called, and this function code will be executed, and inside this function what we have, we are calling this connect database function. So firstly the connection will be established. Okay, and then this will return us the cursor and the connection, and with the help of cursor database will be created and the table will be created. Okay, and now inside this tree view data, we just want to establish the connection. So we are writing connect database there, right? So it will simply establish the connection for us and will return us the cursor and connection, and then we can use that cursor and connection here. Okay, I hope this is clear. And also we can wrap this code in try and except block. So suppose if there is any kind of error, that can be handled by the except block. So if in fetching the employee data there is some kind of error, then this except block code will be able to handle that error. So we'll accept exception as E, and then we can display a message box and we'll show error. Title will be error, and the message will be error due to, and we'll pass this E variable here, and we'll convert it into F string like this. and then finally we can close the connection and close the cursor. So we'll write cursor dot close and we'll write connection dot close. So it's a good practice to always close your cursor and connection after completing database operations to free up resources. Okay. So now the create database and create table code is not executing again and again. It is just establishing the database connection. That's it. Same thing happens here. Okay. Just we are establishing the connection. And we can also add the try and except block here. What if there is some kind of error while inserting the data, so we can handle it. So we'll add the except block here, except exception as E, and we can simply copy this code from here. Okay, we'll replace here like this. So here also we'll close the connection after database operations are performed. Now if I run it, I'm getting error due to no database selected. So this error is coming from here, from this preview data function. So if you see this connect database, okay, we are calling this connect database function. Here what is happening, this database connection is getting established, right, but no database is getting selected from here, right? So what I have to do, after this we have to use that database. Okay, so I'll write one query here, cursor dot execute use inventory system, like this. So now if I run it, now you are not seeing that error, right? So we have to do the same thing in add employee also. So here we can add it. Okay, we will connect with the database, but we also have to use that database, then only the insertion will take place. Okay. Here you see we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 ID. Okay, now if I repeat some ID, like for example if I fill this form by ID 2, now after filling this form, if I'm adding this data, I'm getting error here, error due to duplicate entry for key employee data dot primary, right? So we are trying to add a duplicate data, that's why we are getting this error, and that's why I have applied try and except block here. Okay, so now we are able to handle that exception. So we are simply displaying the message box. So if you will repeat the ID, because the ID is the primary key, so it cannot be repeated. If you will try to repeat it, you will see this error message. Or we can also check for the existence of the employee ID before attempting to insert it. In that case, you can show a custom error message like employee ID already exists using messagebox.showError. By checking the ID before the insert operation, you can prevent unnecessary database operations. If the ID already exists, you can stop the process early, reducing the load on the database. So just after this try, we can execute one query, cursor.execute, and here we can write select employee ID from employee data, where employee ID equals to %s, and this %s will be replaced with employee ID value from the entry field. Okay, so what is this query? Here you are selecting the employee ID column from the employee data, where employee ID matches with this employee ID value from the entry field. Okay, so if you are writing some employee ID that already exists in the database, then this will give you a record. So we'll check if cursor dot fetch 1. So if we are getting some record, then we will display a message box dot show error. Title will be error, and the message will be ID already exists. So this is the custom message that we will show. So it's better for users to understand, right? And then we will return from here. We will not put a load on the database, so we will not execute these commands. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now if I run this code, let me fill this form, and I will be using a duplicate ID. So here you see the ID2 is duplicate ID. Now if I add, so we are directly seeing this message ID already exists. Okay, but if I'm providing a unique employee ID, data is inserted successfully, right? So if you are repeating the employee ID, then this code will be executed, okay, and it will return from here, means rest of the code will not be executed. Now the next functionality, once I click any of these rows, I want its data to be filled in these fields, corresponding fields. Okay, so I'm going to define a function here, def select data, and I'll simply print a statement data selected. Okay, now I need to call this function. So from where I'll call it, I'll actually bind this function with the employee tree view. Okay, so here I'll write employee tree view dot bind method. Okay, and I'll bind it with mouse left button. So in these angular brackets, I'll pass button release 1. Okay, this represents mouse left button, and I'm gonna call this function select data without parenthesis. Okay, so whenever you will select any row, this function will be called. Let's see. So once I select a row, you see we are getting one error that select data takes 0 positional arguments but 1 was given. So when you click mouse button, then some event is passed, so we need to receive that event in this select data function. So we'll go at the top, and here we can receive it in some variable like event. Okay, this will not have any usage, but it's just that when you are pressing the mouse button, then some event is passed and we need to receive this in this variable. Let's run again. Once I select this row, you can see what is getting printed, data selected, right? So whenever you will select any row, this function code will be executed. So which row is selected? Firstly, we'll get that. So we'll write employee tree view dot selection. Okay, and this will give you the index of the row that is selected. We can print this index. Let's run and see. If I'm selecting this first one, you can see we are seeing the index, right? And similarly, if I select some other one, so we are seeing its index, right? Now with the help of this index, we can get the content. Okay, so we'll write employee tree view dot item, and we'll pass the index. Okay, this will give us the content. So we can store in this content variable, and then we can print this content just to show you what is there inside it. Now if I run it again, if I select this first row, so here we are getting the dictionary inside this content variable, and this dictionary has this key values, and this is the value. Okay, this is the actual content. So we are interested in this array. So how can we get it? So we can write content, and in square brackets we'll pass the key, which is values. So this will give us the value, right, which is the array. So we can store it in this row variable. Okay, and now if I print this row variable, you can see we are getting the actual data. And now we can insert this data in the corresponding fields. Okay, but we will not be able to access the fields here. Like for example, if I try to access employee ID entry, so I'm not able to use it, right, because these entry fields are inside employee form. So what we can do, we can pass the entry fields and the combo boxes to select data function. So here I'm gonna pass those fields. Okay, we have already passed those fields in the clear fields function, so we can copy the fields from there only. And here I'm gonna pass them. So you see we are seeing these errors on these fields. This is because we are calling the select data function before we are defining these fields. So these fields are getting defined from here onwards, right? So what we can do, we can simply copy this, and we can cut it, and we can call it after these fields are defined. So we can call it from the bottom also. So we'll go at the bottom, and here we can call it. Now you see the error is gone. So next thing is that we need to copy these fields again, and we have to pass them as parameter to the select data. So we'll pass here like this, and then we can format it. Now let's just insert the data in employee ID entry. So we'll write employee ID entry dot insert method. Okay, and at the starting index we will be inserting this array first index value, right? So we'll take row and we'll pass 0 index to it. Okay, so this represents 3 in this case. Okay, let's run and see if it is working fine or not. So it is not working. We are seeing the error, select data missing one required positional argument password entry. So let's go to the select data. Here if you see password entry is there, but event is not here, right? So as you can see this error, unresolved reference event. So we'll have to use the lambda keyword here. Okay, and we have to pass the event as a parameter. So when you click your mouse button, this event is passed, and we are passing this event to the select data. I hope this is clear. Now if I run it, once I select this row, you can see we are seeing 3 in this employee ID entry field, right? So we'll do the same thing for other fields. So we'll copy this same line with the help of Control D, and we'll name it name entry, and we'll pass row index 1. Okay, and let's just print this row once, so it will be easy for you to fill all the values. Once you select this row, now so you are getting this array here, right? Now after name entry, you have to insert value in the email entry. So email entry dot insert at the 0th index, you have to insert row at index 2. Okay, you can see the email is at index 2, right? Then we'll have to use the gender, which is a combo box, and here we have to set. And what we'll set? We'll set row value, which is at index 3. Then we have DOB date entry. So we'll set date, and date will be row at index 4. After that, contact entry dot insert, because it's an entry field, so we'll insert at starting index row 5. After that, employment type combo box dot set row at index 6. Then education combo box dot set row at index 7. After that, work shift combo box dot set row at index 8. Then address text dot insert, and at the starting index we'll insert row 9. Then date of joining date entry dot set date row at index 10. After that, salary entry dot insert, at the 0th index we'll insert row 11. After that, user type combo box dot set row 12, and then password entry dot insert, and we'll insert row 13. Okay, now let's run and see. I think we are getting some error. Entry index takes 0 positional argument, but 3 was given. Email entry okay, here I have written index by mistake, it should be insert. And there is also this issue, here I forgot to mention the starting index in this entry field, right? So if I select some row, so you see the previous data is not getting deleted and this new data is getting inserted. So firstly we have to delete the previous data, and then only the insertion to should take place. So what we'll do, just before insertion I'm gonna call clear fields function. Okay, and to this we have to pass all the entry fields, so we can copy it from here like this. Okay, and now let's run again and see. If I'm selecting this row, and now if I select some other row, you can see the previous data is getting deleted now, and no duplicate data is getting inserted in the entry fields. I hope this is clear. But you see here the date of birth is 2007, right? So this 2007 is not getting filled here. Okay, similarly 1993 is not getting filled up here. But if you see this date of joining is correctly getting filled here. So here we have 2024. If I select this row, here we are getting 2023, right? So why this date of birth is not working? Let's see. So here also you see we have mentioned date of joining, so this should be date of birth, right? And date of joining is here. I hope this is clear. Now if I select any row, you can see the date is perfectly selected. Okay, and we can clear everything from here. So once I click on this clear, you see this is not getting deselected. So we also want to deselect this. So we also want to remove the selection. So we'll go to the clear function. So we can search for the code by pressing Ctrl F, clear fields. So it will be easy for you to reach to that position. So here at the end we also need to remove the selection. So we'll write employee tree dot selection remove, and here we will be removing employee tree dot selection. So this is how we have to write in order to remove the row selection. Now if I run again, if I'm selecting some row, now if I click on this clear, you can see the selection is removed. Now let's work on this update button functionality. So what I want, so firstly I should select some row so that its data is filled in these fields, and then whatever change that we have to do, we can do. Like for example, if we have to make it an admin, we can select admin, and now if I click on this update button, the data should be updated in the database as well as in this tree view. I hope you are getting me. So let's start adding this functionality. So just below this, I'm going to create a function def update employee, and let me just add a print statement updating, and now let's call this update employee function. So from where I'll call it from the update button. So here we have this update button, and I'm going to pass the command. So command equals to update employee without parenthesis. Okay, now if I run it, once I click on this update button, you can see updating is getting printed. Okay, so it's working perfectly fine. So let's go to the function. So firstly we'll check if the tree view row is selected or not. If it is not selected, we'll display a message box that row is not selected. Okay, so how we will check it, we'll use employee tree view dot selection method, and we'll store the index in this selected variable. So we'll check if not selected. It means if you have not selected any row, then this condition will become true, and in this case I'm gonna display an error message. So I'll write message box dot show error, title will be error, and the message will be no row is selected, like this. So now if I run it, if I click on this update, it says no row is selected. Now if I select some row, you see row is not getting selected. Why is that? So when we are selecting the row, yeah, here we are selecting the row, right? Select data function. So because of this clear fields, function, this employee tree view selection is getting removed, right? So what we'll do, we'll pass one argument to this clear fields. Here the variable is check. Okay, and I'll check that if this check variable is true, then only will execute this line. And now I'll pass value to this check variable from the clear button. So here we need to pass true. Okay, So when I'll be clicking on this clear button, then I want the uh, selection to be removed, right? So that's why I'm passing true value from here. Okay. So because of this true value, this condition will become true and selection will be removed. Okay. But when I'm calling this clear fields function from the select data, in that case, I don't want to remove the selection. So in that case, I will pass false value from here. Okay. Once this false value will go inside this check variable, then this condition will become false and this code will not be executed. I hope this is clear. Now, if you see, if I am selecting some row, you can see the selection is not getting removed. I hope this is clear. Okay. So once the selection is done, now if I click on this update, now we are not seeing that error message, no row is selected, right? So next step is, once the admin updates the details and clicks on this update button, then the data should be updated in the database and in this tree view. So here we'll go to the else part, and in the else part we'll execute one query. Okay, but for that we need database connection, so we'll call this connect database function, and this will give us cursor and connection, with the help of which we will be executing the SQL queries, and with the help of this we will be committing our changes, right? So after this, so what I'll do, I'll copy this code from here. So I'll firstly check if cursor or connection is none or not. If they are none, then we'll return, and if these two are not none, then we'll simply use the inventory system database. So I'll paste here. Okay. After this, we will be writing the query to update the database. So for that, we'll write cursor dot execute update employee data, set name equals to %s, email equals to %s, comma gender equals to %s, comma dob equals to %s, and so on. So this is how you have to add rest of the column names. Okay, make sure the spelling is correct and you can match it with the columns that are there in the database. Okay, so you can move this text to a new line. Once you move it to a new line, you see this is now separated string. So this is one string and this is another string. Okay, after this you have to add where clause, where employee ID equals to %s. After this we have to mention the actual data, so these %s will be replaced with that data. So just after this you have to pass the data in the form of a tuple. So basically you have to pass the values of the entry fields and the combo boxes here. Okay, so how to receive those values? So you remember we have created add employee. So here we have these values, so we'll copy them from here and we'll paste here. Then while calling this update employee function from the update button, we also need to pass the values. Okay, so here we are calling the function. Okay, so we'll copy the values from here because it will be this same values only, and you can pass here like this, and you need to use lambda here. Okay, now you can press Ctrl Alt L for code formatting. I hope this is clear. And now we can copy these values that are coming from the entry fields, and we can paste them inside this tuple like this, and make sure you add this employee ID at the end. Okay, because if you see update employee data set name, so corresponding to each column you will be putting the entry field value. Okay, and at the end you will add employee ID like this, and after this you have to commit your changes. You will write connection dot commit like this, and then you can simply display the message box that uh, data is updated successfully like this. Okay, and I'll also call the tree view data function here. Okay, so that you see the updated data in the tree view also. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now if I run it, if I'm selecting some row, let me just add Vic here in the name. Now if I click on this update, you see data is updated successfully, and you can see the name is changed here. I hope this is clear, and this tree view is also updated. Okay, and we can clear from here. So this way you will be able to edit any of these fields. Okay, so here you see education is updated. After this, the next thing is, if I'm selecting some row and without modifying anything, I'm directly trying to update, still it says data is updated successfully. So in this case I should see a message that no changes detected. Okay, after using this inventory system, I'll execute one more query, and here I'll write select asterisk from employee data. Okay, so this will select all the records, right? But we want to select where employee ID equals to %s, and we'll replace this %s with employee ID entry field value. Okay, so inside this tuple we generally provide comma at the end. Okay, so that this is treated as a tuple. Okay, so now we'll fetch the record. So we'll write cursor dot fetch one, and we'll store this result in this current data. Okay, let's print this current data, and then after that I'll take these values that are coming from the entry fields and the combo boxes, and we'll add them inside a tuple. So I'll name it new data, and I'll create a tuple and we'll pass these values like this, and then I'll print this new data. Now let me run this code. I'm selecting this data. Now if I click on update, so here you see this is the current data and this is the new data. So this data is coming from the database, and this data is coming from the entry fields, but we will not be modifying the employee ID, right, because it's unique. So what we'll do from this current data, so we'll update this current data, we'll write current data. So we are simply slicing this current data. So now we will get records from index 1 onwards. Okay, so this employee record will not get. I hope this is clear. Similarly, from here we'll simply remove the employee ID. So we'll get records from name. Now if I run it, I have selected a row. Now if I am doing a change here, I am selecting MSc instead of BCom in education. Now if I click on update, now if you see, this is the data from the database and this is the data from the entry field. Okay, so if you compare this data, everything is same except for this education and this address. Here we are simply seeing these \n, right, which are not matching. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna compare these two. So I'll write if current data equals to new data. In that case, we'll display message box and we'll show info. Title will be information and the message will be no changes detected, like this. But because of this address field, this condition will not be true, because you see \n are not matching. So what we can do when we are adding the employee, so here we are adding the employee, right? So this address text area by default adds \n at the end. Okay, so what we can do, we can simply strip \n while inserting. Okay, so before inserting the data, I'll take this address and I'll use a strip method like this. So now \n will not be added in the addresses while inserting the data. Okay, similarly I'll come to this update employee and here also I'll take this address and will strip. After using the strip, we also need to update the address value. So here we'll write address. Similarly, we'll do it in add employee. Okay. Now if we add a new data, for this previous records, there will be \n. So if I try to update, we have not done any changes, but still we are getting data is updated successfully. Okay, and you can see \n here. So this is the data coming from the database. Since this is already present in the database with \n, that's why we are seeing \n. Okay, but here we are not seeing it because of this strip method. But if I add a new record, so I'll clear these fields and we'll add a new record. After entering new details, now if I add, you see data is inserted successfully. Okay, here we have the data. Now I'm clearing it, and now if I select this row, okay, and if I'm not making any changes and directly try to update, you see now we are getting no changes deducted. but it is also showing us data is updated successfully. So why is this happening? Let's see. So if you see these two records, current data and new data, now the address doesn't have \n. Okay, now the next thing is, after no changes deducted, we are saying data is updated successfully. So after no changes deducted, we will simply return from here. Okay, we will not execute rest of the code. I hope this is clear. If I'm selecting that same row, not doing any changes and directly update, it says no changes deducted, and now we are not seeing that. Okay, but if I am making some change, now if I click on update, you can see data is updated successfully, education is changed. So I hope you understood this functionality. And now we will work on the functionality of this delete button. So what we want, if I'm selecting this record and click on this delete button, then it should ask us, do you really want to delete this record? If I say yes, then this record should be deleted from the database as well as from this tree view. And if I say no, then nothing should happen. Let me show you. So I'll define a function here, def delete employee, and I'll call this from the delete button. So here we have this delete button. So I write command equals to delete employee, and we will be requiring the values of the entry field. So we'll copy it from here and we'll paste here, and we'll add lambda here so that this function is not executed automatically when we run the code, but it should execute only when we click on this delete button. Okay, now we need to receive these values in some variables inside delete employee function. So we are already receiving those values in this update employee, so we can copy it from here and I'll paste here. So again, firstly we will check if the row is selected or not, just like we have checked here in this update employee, right? So we'll use employee tree view dot selection, and this will give us the index, and we'll check if there is no index, it means the row is not selected, right? So we can copy it from here and we'll paste here, and if row is selected, then we'll go into the else part, and in the else part we will establish the connection, and we'll check whether the cursor and connection is not null. Okay, and then we'll use the inventory system. So we'll copy this code from here and we'll paste here. I forgot to add try and except block inside this update employee. Okay, so what if there is any kind of exception? So we'll handle it. So we'll write try block here. Okay, we'll select this code and we'll press tab, and then we'll write the exception as E. Okay, and we can copy this thing from add employee. So we'll add, display this message box, and then we'll add the finally block where we'll close the cursor and the connection like this. Alright, and then we can simply remove these print statements because now everything is clear to you. Okay, so after this, after we are on inventory system, then we will write the query to delete the record. And yeah, I forgot, in the else part I will display firstly a message box. So it will be ask yes no message box. Do you really want to delete the record, right? So I'll write message box dot ask yes no method. Firstly the title will be confirm and the message will be, do you really want to delete the record? Okay, and this ask yes no method returns either true or false, that we can store in some variable like result, and then we'll check if result. Okay, so when the user will select yes, inside this result you will get true and this condition will become true. Once this condition becomes true, it means the user wants to delete the record. So then only we will execute this code. Okay, so after this we'll write cursor dot execute delete from employee data where employee ID equals to %s, and this employee ID will be replaced with employee ID entry field value. After this we need to commit the changes, so we'll write connection dot commit, and then we will display the tree view data, which will be the updated tree view data. Okay, and then we'll display message box, will show info, title will be success, and the message will be record is deleted, like this. Okay, and then I'll again add try and except block here, so that if there's any kind of exception while deleting the record, then we can handle it. Mistakenly I have added this except block here, which is wrong, so I'll cut it from here. I have to add it at the end, right here, like this. Okay, and I will provide indentation to this code as well. Tab. Okay, sorry, I made this mistake. So all this code is a part of the try block. Okay, we minimize this so you can see it carefully. So this code is a part of try block, and then if there is any kind of exception, we'll display the error message. Okay, and then we are closing the connection. So I'll copy this, and here we are adding the try block, and after this we'll paste here. Okay, so if there is any kind of exception, we'll display the error message, and then we are closing the cursor and the connection. And then if this result variable has false, means the user has selected no, in that case nothing will happen. Okay, because after this if I'm not writing any code. I hope this is clear. And I am not going to use these values. Okay, only employee ID is getting used here. Okay, so rest of the values we don't require. So from the delete button, I'm gonna remove these values that we are passing here. Okay, only employee ID entry is required in case of delete employee. Now if we run it, sorry, we have to run the dashboard file. So if I'm deleting this record, so I'll select this record and we'll click on this delete. It says, do you really want to delete the record? If I say no, nothing will happen. But if I say yes, this record is deleted. Okay, And if you are not selecting any row and directly try to click on this delete, it says no row is selected. So I hope you understood the functionality of this delete button. And now we are left with the functionality of the search button and this show all button. So let's quickly finish these two. So firstly, let me show you how the search functionality works in my original project. So if I directly click on the search button without selecting the option and entering the search term, it says enter value to search, right? So if I'm adding search by name, and now if I click on the search, it says enter value to search. So we have to enter the value here. So suppose I'm entering just Faz and not complete Faizan Khan. If I'm clicking on the search, you can see we are seeing the result. So how this search functionality works, it looks for the lookalike term. The database find entries that look like the search term. Okay, and then when we'll click the show all, we'll see all the records. So let's see. So here we have the search button. So to this search button, I'm gonna pass a command. So command equals to search employee. Okay, and to the search employee, we have to pass two fields. First is search combo box value, and second is search entry field value, like this. And we'll add lambda here. And now we need to define the search employee. So after this delete only, we can define it. So it will receive two values, first inside the search option and second inside this value variable. So if I print these two values, search option and value, let's see what we are getting. So if I directly click on the search, we are getting search by an empty string, which you are not able to see, right? Because it's empty. So firstly, we will apply the condition that if the search option has search by, then it should show us that no option is selected. Okay, and if entry field is empty, in that case we should see no value is searched. So here we'll check if search option equals to search by. Okay, if the user has not selected any value, then it will be set to search by. So we'll display message box and will show error, title will be error, and the message will be no option is selected. Okay, then we'll go to elif I mean, and we'll check for value. If it is equals to null, then we'll display message box and we'll show error, title will be error, and the message will be enter the value to search, like this. And then we'll go to the else part, and in the else part I will firstly print these two values. Okay, now if I run it, it says indentation expected. Yeah, so we need to provide indentation here. So if I'm not selecting this and directly try to search, no option is selected. Now if I select some option, now if I search, it says enter the value to search, right? And now if I'm entering some value like Faz, now if I click on search, so in this case else part code is executed, name option is selected, and faz, which is the value. So firstly, let me show you how to search for a record in MySQL command line client. Then it will be easy for you to write the code for it. So I'll open MySQL command line client, and here I'll use inventory system database firstly, and then I will see the data from employee table. So all these records are there. So if I have to search for this record where name is Faizan, okay, so what I'll write here, I'll write select asterisk from employee data where name equals to Faizan. So you see we are getting this record, right? But if I write the same query, but this time if I enter Faz only, will it work? Will it give us this record? It says empty set. Okay, so in order to search for look alike record, we have to modify this search query. So we'll have to write select asterisk from employee data where name like Faz. So this is how we have to write in order to search for a record which looks alike Faz. Now if I hit enter, so we are seeing this error because I forgot to put this in single quotes. Okay, so I'll press up arrow and we'll do this change, and now if I hit enter, you can see we are seeing a look-alike match, right? So I hope you understood this query. So we have to write select asterisk from employee data where this will be the search option, right? And this will be the value that will be coming from the search entry. And if you want to use this way, then you will have to enter the complete value in order to search. Okay, I hope you understood this. So instead of printing, we will execute one query. But before that, we need to connect to the database. So we'll call this connect database function, and here we'll get the cursor and the connection. Okay, and then we'll check if not cursor or connection, then we'll simply return from here, and then we will execute one query, and we'll simply use inventory system, and then we'll execute the query to search for the record. So here I'll write select asterisk from employee data where, and we'll mention this search option as a f string here, okay, because it's a variable, so we have to use its value here, where search option like %s, and this %s will be replaced with the entry field value that will mention between these symbols. So inside these curly braces, we'll pass the value variable which has the entry field value, and here I'll add the f string like this. So I hope you understood this query. This is similar to what we have written here. Select asterisk from employee data where name like Fez. Okay. After this, we will fetch all the records. So we'll write cursor dot fetch all, and that we will store in some variable like records. and then we will be using a loop for record in records, and then we will be inserting one by one each record inside the employee tree view. So I'll write here employee tree view dot insert method. Firstly we'll pass empty string, then we will insert the record at the end, and the value will be record. Okay, and also before inserting the record we will clear the old records that are there in the tree view. So for that we'll write employee tree view dot delete, and we'll get all the children's. So we'll write employee tree view dot get children, like this. So we'll get all the children's and then we'll delete. Now we'll add this thing in try and except block, and we'll add the exception from here. Now let's format this code, and now let's run this code. So if I search by name, we are not seeing any result. Why? So we are seeing this error because I have not added not here. Okay, if not cursor or not connection, then we will return. Okay, now if I run it again, now you see we are getting the record, right? Similarly, if I search based on email, so this email doesn't exist, so we are not seeing this record. Okay, so I've entered just Ravi and it searched the email whether the email contains Ravi word or not. Since it contains, so we are seeing this result. Now if I search based on ID, we are seeing the error due to unknown column ID in where clause. So if you remember, we don't have any column with name ID, we have employee ID, right? So we can change this. So we'll search for search combo box. So we are reached here directly, and instead of ID we'll change it to employee ID. And now if I run it, so these values should match with the column names that are there in the database. So you are seeing this record. Okay, I hope this is clear. So I have added these three values only, but you are free to add more values like date of birth, contact, employment type, education, address, salary, user type. Okay, so let's add 2-3 more. If I'm adding employment type, so you see we don't have any column with employment space type. In the database we have this column employment underscore type, right? Similarly work underscore shift. But if we will display like this, then it will not look nice, right? But it's up to you. If you want to add like this in the values, then it will work directly. Okay, similarly education comma work shift. Now if I run it, so we'll be able to search based on, okay, so I made a mistake here. Everything is coming in one only. Yeah, because I have to separate each string like this. So if I search based on employment type, you see this is not looking nice, right? But we can search, like for example, part-time. So we are seeing all the employees which are working part-time. Okay, but instead of this, let's just add in a proper way employment space type. Similarly, work shift, work space shift. Since this doesn't match with the column name in the database, so what I'll do, I'll go to the search function. In the else part, I will modify the search option. So I'll take the search option values and will replace the space with underscore simply. So employment space type will be replaced with employment underscore type. Now if I run it, so if I select this employment type, if I type part only, so you see it is working fine now. Similarly, we can search for the work shift, morning, so we are seeing the result. If I don't add this line and directly try employment type like this, so you see we are getting the error here. This is the exception error. So I hope this is clear. And now let's work on the functionality of show all button. So I'll define a function here, def show all. By clicking on show all, we should see all the records, right? So we have already written the function to get all the records from the database. That function name is tree view data, right? So we will directly use this. So we'll call this function there. This is giving us all the records, right? So here we'll directly call this tree view data. And now let's call this function show all. So we'll go to this show all button, and here we'll pass the command equals to show all without parenthesis. So now if I run it, if I search any employee based on name, so I'm getting the record here, right? Now if I click on show all, I'm able to see all the records, right? And once I click on show all, I want this entry field should be deleted, and this combo box should be reset to search by. So while calling this show all button from the show button, we have to pass the lambda, and we will be passing the combo box and the entry field so that we can reset them. So we'll pass search entry and search combo box. Okay, now let's receive them. Search entry comma search combo box like this, and here we can delete everything from this once the user clicks on show all. After that, search combo box dot set, and we'll set it to search by like this. Now if I run it, now if I search based on education, So we are seeing the record. Now if I click on show all, you see this is removed and this is set to search by. So I hope this is clear to you, and we have finally completed this. It's a long video, but if you have completed till here, then I'm pretty much sure you must have learned a lot of things. Let me know in the comment section if you have successfully completed till here. And if you have any doubts or you didn't understand anything, let me know that as well. And in the next video, we will be working on this suppliers button and this categories button.